Hi, I'm Justin, aka the Ice Cream Man. I'm building a brand new coffee and dessert business in public and I'm taking you on the journey with me. The aim is to open the first store by the 1st of March 2026, which is 220 days from now. This is week one. Let's get into it. Obviously, first thing you need to do when founding any business is set up your new entity. In this case, we'll be setting up a limited company, which you can do on Company's House. Pretty straightforward. Log on to Company's House and complete the details to register your company. It costs about £50. You'll just need to know who you want your directors to be and who your shareholders are. But as I say, it's pretty straightforward to do and you don't need much hand holding through that. The point of this business that we're setting up is to both show you how to set up a new coffee and dessert business from scratch, but more importantly to show you how to build a company that can scale. So my intention from the very start here is to build something we can franchise. So we're very much franchise first minded as we go through the process of setting this business up. As such, I'll be bringing some partners into the new company with me, which I am really excited about. They are fantastic, experienced professionals in the franchise space. They very much share my kind of values and ethics, which is a really important part of kind of what you want to look for when you're choosing a business partner. And I'm really looking forward to introducing you to those guys along the way. But for the time being, that means that we've got to set up our limited company. Now, the limited company that operates the business and the franchise will be set up as a limited company with shares that will be held between myself and my business partners. However, rather than just holding the shares in my name, I've chosen to set up a limited company which will hold shares in the new limited company that will operate the franchise. There's a couple of benefits to that. First of all, if the franchise company were to decide to declare dividends, if you were to hold the shares in your name, then you are essentially going to incur the tax on receipt of those dividends, whether you like it or not. And that might not necessarily be at a convenient time for you. If you have any experience in the ice cream industry or the kind of dessert coffee sector in general, you might know that the business can be quite lumpy. You can have some really good years, you can have some pretty barren years, and it's really important that you are able to mitigate the ebbs and flows and the seasonality as best as possible. So I am setting up my own limited company, which will own my portion of the shares in the new franchise company. And there's a number of benefits to doing this. First of all, if the franchise company decides to declare dividends, the dividends can be moved from one limited company to the next without incurring any taxable events. And then you can choose as and when to withdraw the money from that limited company by way of dividends or however you wish to remunerate yourself. But the most important thing is you get to control when that money is distributed to you, and therefore you get to control when the tax liability is due. Not only that, it also means that once the money is sitting within your new limited company, you can choose to reinvest that as you wish without needing to take them out personally and incurring tax. So for example, you can reinvest the profits into other ventures without taking the income out of your new limited company and then incurring that personal tax liability, which is really handy if you're looking to continue to grow and diversify your income. And lastly, it's a much easier way to kind of exit, and it makes for much more tax efficient succession planning. It may feel a bit premature to be talking about exits when we are only in week one of building out our business. However, I think it's really critical from the inception of the new business that you consider your exit plan from day one and build your company around that exit plan. The reality is you wouldn't start a marathon without knowing where the finish line was. And I feel that that's exactly the same for starting your own business. If you want to maintain a dedicated, focused, driven, determined approach to your business, you really need to know what way you're going. And for me, whether that be a succession plan for a family-run business and you want to go multi-generational, which again is a fantastic business model, or you want to have a large liquidity exit event at some point in the 10, 20, 30 year life cycle of the business, whatever way that is, that should inform all the strategy of your business throughout this startup process. So the next thing I want to share with you is our exploration of funding options. And realistically, there are three major funding options that you have available to you when you're starting up your new business. And that could either be debt funding, equity funding, or crowdfunding. Simply put, debt funding can be done in a number of ways. That can be asset financing, so you purchase large equipment for your new business, for example, ice cream production equipment, and you'll pay a deposit for that, and then a finance company will lease that back to you over a period of time, 5 to 10 years. You will pay for that equipment incrementally rather than having to pay it all up front, which makes your cash flow slightly easier in the immediate term. That means that you don't have to necessarily raise as much capital up front. And then at the end of that term, there will be a final payment, which is generally just a kind of small couple of percent of the overall cost of the plant. And that will then secure the asset in your name and you'll own it outright. Another ways you can do it is traditional bank loans, startup loans. You can do revenue-based loans or merchant advances, which is where you take the capital up front and the merchant services will take a percentage of your card payments received over a period of time until the capital is repaid, including the interest. So some pros and cons to debt financing. It means that you keep control of your business because there's no dilution of your ownership of the business, and it's pretty fast. It's probably going to be the fastest way out there for you to raise finance for your business. However, there are some downsides, including there is a higher personal risk. Often that comes in the form of a personal guarantee or a PG, which anyone who started a business in the past, I'm sure, will have had to do a PG. And that can add a lot of stress to your personal life, particularly if you've got maybe a partner, a spouse, or a young family, and you're having to put, let's say, for example, your home on the line. That can lead to a lot of sleepless nights when things aren't going well. Another downside is the fact that the repayments can impact cash flow because you'll be having to pay back the loan incrementally each month until the entirety of the loan is paid off in full. And it doesn't matter if you have a bumpy year or a fallow year, those repayments are still due. And that can really, really put the pressure on during the lean times. And often you'll find yourself working much more on firefighting and making sure you're getting the cash required to keep the business afloat instead of doing what you should be doing, which is focusing on growing your business and ensuring that you and your team have the best environment to work in, to succeed, to achieve your mission, and to give your customers the best possible customer experience. The next opportunity for fundraising is through equity finance. Now with equity finance, you're talking about less personal risk because obviously you are investing someone else's money in your project, but you are giving up equity up front for doing that. So that means if you do look to exit further down the line, you'll be doing so with a lesser percentage of the company than you would have had if you had taken out debt instead. The downside to this is that it's much slower to raise. You need to have credibility, and you need to be able to build a robust investor deck, pitch deck, financial forecasts, and all of the stuff that's required to build that credibility in you as a business leader. But as far as I see it, you really want to make sure that you can bring in investors that bring you value. And if you focus on an investor that has expertise in your industry, that can add huge value to your business and to you as a business leader because you'll have so much to learn from. It does reduce some of your autonomy, but I feel, particularly if you're thinking at it from this early stage, I feel that you bring in the right equity investor, private equity or VC at this early stage, they can really help shape the growth of your business and help you achieve your exit quicker and probably at a greater exit price than you would be able to do on your own. The last opportunity for fundraising of the main three is through crowdfunding. It's great for marketing. It builds trust, community, loyalty, and transparency because people can see that you're building from the ground up, and you are pretty much obligated to be incredibly transparent from the ground up because people want to know what they're investing in. And for me, tends to create much better businesses, much more ethical. It also means that you launch with brand fans, which is great because you don't need to start building them up from the moment that you open the doors. You have a ready built customer base that is supporting you from the start, from the day that you open the doors. They're already there. It's admin heavy, much like with the equity fundraising. You're still going to need to do your cash flow forecasts and your investor decks and pitch decks. There's going to also be requirements for kind of fulfillment of investor comms, and the time frame is going to be similar to the raising equity finance, which is going to be a bit slower than the debt financing. But for me, I think as long as you're planning far enough ahead, and you've got 220 days, that should be plenty. My tips for this would be, first of all, raise more capital than you think you're going to need. A lot of the times, founders will be looking at their startup costs for equipment, staffing costs for the first few months, marketing, administrative costs, and similar. And they'll give themselves enough runway for the first 3 to 6 months of operations, thinking from then on, we can operate out of cash flow. I can tell you right now, that is really going to suck when it gets to month 6 and you've run out of any reserves and you're just really just scrimping and saving each month, trying to make payroll, trying to pay your suppliers. You'll be forever behind the 8 ball. You'll be constantly firefighting instead of what you should be doing, which is focusing on building out your business and growing it to achieve your mission and your exit strategy. So instead, plan to raise much more than you think you will need. Personally, I think it is very reasonable to expect to raise an 18 to 24 month runway of capital, which will give you plenty of slack to ensure that you can just focus on the important stuff. Because remember, constant pressure kills focus. And I know from experience that eventually that constant pressure will sap all your motivation and energy and drive to get where you want to be. And yeah, it really sucks. So raise more than you think you're going to need. And it's better to raise once and build than it is to try and raise a second and third amount later down the line, should you realize that you need it because you didn't plan far enough ahead. So this week, I went to a founder funding event in Liverpool, which was hosted by Barclays and the British Business Bank. Really great for startup funds. I'm sure you'll have a founder funding group or something similar in any region of the country that you're in. I got to spend time with other founders, startup founders in the room, which is great for that peer support networking and peer learning. I also got to spend time with delegates from Barclays and from the British Business Bank. So one thing I did learn is that the British Business Bank allows companies, startups to raise a loan up to £25,000 for your startup per founder. So if you have 4 founders, you can raise £100,000. Those loans are, whilst they're actually business loans, they are personal liabilities. So you do need to be aware of that. There is some personal risk there, but anyone that you'll be looking to raise money from will expect you to have some skin in the game. So there's always going to be a degree of risk. This could be your skin in the game and therefore your risk. So next step from us for raising finance is that I have a meeting booked in with a broker who can introduce us to some private equity and venture capital. So I'm looking forward to taking you on the journey with us for that. That is in around about a week's time. We will be looking for someone that specializes in the QSR, coffee or dessert sector, because again, I can't reiterate this enough. If you can find someone that has sector experience that can help you build your business from the ground up with that franchise and exit mentality, it will pay off dividends in the future. And I would much rather have a smaller piece of a larger pie than the other way around. First plan is obviously to get our first store open by the 1st of March 2026. From there, I want to achieve 50 either privately owned or franchise stores within 10 years, at which point I would be looking to exit. So that gives us until the 1st of March 2036 to exit. And as I said, it may seem a bit early to be thinking about an exit, but you can't run a marathon without knowing where the finish line is. So that's it for today. And thank you for watching. Take what works for you, leave the rest, and I'll see you in the next one.